Chinese government-backed mining companies are using Congolese children to mine cobalt, a key in electric car batteries. Are American car makers helping China to exploit African children? China holds the world's dominant cobalt processing. In the Democratic Republic of Congo, unsafe working conditions, less than $1 a day, injuries, and diseases inside the mines. Are these the consequences of a greener world? And are bloody batteries made from cobalt the best source of the future of cars? And is the American green agenda built with the bloody hands of the children in Africa? Welcome to China Insider. I'm David Zhang. According to human rights lawyer Ervi Dayakis Kyungu, China is using Congolese children to work in cobalt mines. Cobalt is a mineral used in electric car batteries. It is found in crustal rocks, in mines deep into the Earth's crust. This is a key part of China's competition with the United States over who can rule in the new and emerging technology market, namely the electric car market. And that means exploiting 40,000 children in cobalt mines in the Democratic Republic of Congo. At the same time, the so-called green agenda to transform into clean energy vehicles are adding to the process of helping China to exploit the children and adults alike. Instead of relying on clean American-made energy in oil and gas, that is humane to oil and gas workers who are paid well, they decide to go to Africa to get the exploitation instead. Electric car makers like Volkswagen source their cobalt from China, who produces a dominant percentage of the global cobalt production that comes from the Democratic Republic of Congo. According to the New York Times, American car makers General Motors and Tesla also buy from China. American automakers like Ford, GM, and Tesla buy cobalt battery components from suppliers that depend in part on Chinese-owned mines in Congo. A Tesla longer-range vehicle requires about 10 pounds of cobalt, more than 400 times the amount in a cell phone. So it is either continue to buy from Chinese regime-controlled companies that controls not just cobalt, but a wide range of rare earth minerals, ores, and other refinement as well as the processing components, or stop the attempt at the rapid transition into clean energy because the cost is this. Attorney Kyungu testified before Congress this month. He says the children are trafficked to work in the mines, chosen because of their size. They're forced to work grueling hours and face injury and disease. By buying from China, Americans and anyone in the world, perhaps, who is still cozy to the Chinese Communist Party are actively participating in this modern-day slavery in Africa. And the green agenda may not seem so green after all, but rather red. Bloody batteries of the electric cars. More than half of the usage of cobalt is for lithium-ion batteries, which powers the car, and cobalt itself is used for stabilizing the batteries. In this particular case, the Chinese Communist Party's quest for cobalt for batteries and lithium for solar panels to power the so-called green economy means sacrificing an estimated 40,000 children in Congo working in non-regulated mines under hazardous conditions. China owns up to 80% of the cobalt refining in the world and up to 50% of its production in the world. By the time that cobalt inside a lithium-ion battery reaches the United States, installed inside a Tesla, it has gone through the hands of China. Chinese companies as of 2020 owned 15 of the 19 Congo mines producing cobalt. A lawsuit removed one of the ownership, but it is still not enough. Meanwhile, America is willing under this administration to accept destroying domestic energy in oil and gas and coal to help contribute to the exploitation in Congo by these Chinese Communist Party members and their controlled companies. The Democratic Republic of Congo produces more than 70% of the world's cobalt, and about 15 to 30% of it, which is produced in smaller, unregulated mines. Roughly 2 or 3 million people in the DRC rely on cobalt mining to live their lives. In exchange for owning the mines, China promised to invest billions of dollars in Congo's infrastructure, schools, and roads. But we know how that can also be a part of the exploitation, as Chinese investments often disguise their true intention, which is to lock down a country through debt-based contracts. Hidden terms would give China further advantage and control over that country, as they fail to pay back China. This means doubling down on the way over Africa. These Chinese companies get billions in loans from state-backed banks in China and are likely to have drawn billions more that we don't know of. In fact, the 5 biggest Chinese mining companies in Congo had lines of credit from state-backed banks that totaled $124 billion, according to the New York Times. This is the story of China using Africa's natural resources to further its own agenda. Take Huayu Cobalt, for example. That's a Chinese company that supplies Volkswagen for their electric vehicles. Ironically, Huayu means Friends of China. This company is Volkswagen's supplier of cobalt, but guess where that cobalt comes from? A cobalt mine in Congo called Dongfang Mining. LG also partners with Huayu, and recently they've decided to build a recycling plant. Meanwhile, Mercedes said they will only source from certified mines going forward for cobalt. The Democratic Republic of Congo is a resource-rich and governance-poor country, and we might still remember from the history textbooks of King Leopold of Belgium, who committed atrocities in the then-called Free Congo state to get rubber, killing 10 million Congolese. And that story is being repeated by another dictator today, the Chinese Communist Party. Behind every Chinese company is the CCP. In recent days, China also established an umbrella organization to oversee all iron ore production. According to state media, this new Chinese mineral resource group was established on Monday, attended by Vice Premier Han Zheng, who is also a member of the Standing Committee of the Politburo of the Chinese Communist Party. And so being in the Central Committee, the Politburo, indicates that this organization will have direct control from the Chinese Communist Party. And that's just in iron ore. The establishment of the company is a major move by the country to guarantee the supply of important mineral resources. And we can only imagine what's behind the scenes for others, like cobalt or lithium. There are two types of mines for cobalt in Congo, large and small. The small cobalt mines are known as artisanal mines, and they follow no labor laws and have no safety regulations. The mines are supposed to be owned by Congolese citizens, but they're selling their products mostly to Chinese businesses. But even inside China, mines have been known notoriously for death and injuries due to collapse and often because of poor construction and safety regulations. According to attorney Kianggu, the smaller mines are, quote, often no more than narrow shafts dug into the ground, which is why children are recruited. In many cases, the children would descend into the ground and work overtime many hours, with oxygen supplies lasting only half an hour. And they're forced to do this using only their hands or simple tools without any protective equipment. While in the bigger mines, Kianggu also said Chinese nationals will physically oversee some of the mines. Last year, a video surfaced online showing a Chinese worker whipping African workers. Now, let's not even think about working conditions overall. According to the hearing, it is quoted as like slavery. Now, Isaac Newton, the great physicist, told us that the world's energy is constant. Well, if we have one world and only a finite amount of resources, who is to supply that? To mine and harvest the resources? Someone has to. And it turns out in this case, they're children from Congo. Under the climate agenda, China's this push for electric vehicles and the so-called green policy to compete with the United States, to dominate, this is all built on bloody cobalt and lithium. In the cobalt industry, which is a $13 billion industry, children in these mines make less than $1 a day. Yet, in the poverty-stricken Congo, that $1 means children are willing to stay underground, risking their lives. Many miners, children are left with permanent injuries, lung damages, or worse, death. As the global demand for electric vehicles increase, how many lawmakers in the United States are talking about the safety of the source? And how many are worried about their green agenda being at the cost and lives and China's exploitation? Climate change or the climate solution shouldn't be at the expense of people dying or getting severely injured. Achieving a world of so-called clean energy built on the death and exploitation of children, well, that's not a world we want to live in, do we?